Greetings once again, sirs and madams. So glad you could join us for this, the final installment of Donkey Kong Country for better or worse. Today we are talking about Donkey Kong Country 3, but first to look back at our last installment. Donkey Kong Country 2, Diddy's Kong Quest, nothing short of a jaw-dropping and truly epic follow-up to its predecessor. Not hesitating to expand on what the first game established for the series, the game brought us a brand new adventure, taking us deep into enemy territory to do battle with Rool once again. DKC2 shows the world how to build a sequel by introducing new gameplay elements, daring new level design concepts, and even more secrets and goodies to find along the way. This undeniably classic game has cemented itself into the hearts and minds of gamers everywhere, and rightly so. But now, sirs and madams, we come to the end of this Donkey Kong run, for it is here that we come upon the end of the Donkey Kong Country series. I know, but all good things must come to an end sooner or later, right? 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 So yeah, like I said last time, I don't actually know Donkey Kong Country 3 very well. I remember I rented it once when I was young, but something like a week later I got a Nintendo 64, which kind of overshadowed the weekend I had with the game. It's kind of sad to think that a game like this was overshadowed by the release of a new console, especially one that was going to pretty much change the way we played video games, like, forever. As a result, Donkey Kong Country 3 is a game that I pretty much overlooked. I picked it up on the Virtual Console a few years ago and played it a bit, but playing it all the way through for the first time now reawakened some hidden memories and provided a wealth of new experiences. Up front, I will say though that this game is evidence that Rare has been learning and observing throughout the progress of the series, fine-tuning the design of this game in accordance to shortcomings in the previous two. The first one I'll bring up is the always accessible save points. In Donkey Kong Country, the player had to progress to a specific point in each world area in order to save their game. Really only a minor annoyance, since much of Donkey Kong Country is easily manageable. This was, however, carried over to Donkey Kong Country 2, which is noticeably more frustrating, as the game is noticeably more difficult. And just to add insult to injury, the game even made you pay for every use after the first at any given save point. This was probably my biggest gripe with Donkey Kong Country 2, but I didn't bring it up in my last video because the damn thing was 18 minutes long and I had enough stuff to talk about. What this leads to in Donkey Kong Country 3, however, is progression-based save points that are free, and there is always one accessible through the world map. And speaking of the world map, I love how they simplified traveling between world areas, doing away with Funky's flights, opting instead to let the player pretty much go wherever the hell they wanted, assuming they had progressed that far. Donkey Kong Country 3 even does you one better and introduces the beginnings of an open world concept to its world map. There are secrets and collectibles to look for while you're between levels, and even a bunch of characters you can do various fetch quests for. Now, obviously by today's standards, the open world overworld isn't really all that fantastic. I mean, there's basically an entire half to it that's barely even used. There are a grand total of 3 hidden items to collect in that region. As in, that's only those 3 things. Nothing else. By and large, however, the open world aspect of the game does a great job of adding a new dimension of gameplay at a time when open world gaming really wasn't a thing yet. It's pretty groundbreaking and certainly raises the bar. If you're a completionist, this map will take you to way more places than the last 2 games did. Plus, the sheer amount of collectibles there are throughout the game is no joke either. I touched briefly on how Donkey Kong Country 2 was approaching the realm of being a collectathon, but Donkey Kong Country 3 is out loud and proud in that respect. Bananas, Kong letters, balloons, all the classics, and encore performances from tokens, bonus coins, and DK coins. But look at this! Fetch quest items, golden gears, cogs, and banana birds. Normally I think of a full-blown collectathon as a 3D platformer, much in the same vein as Mario 64 or Donkey Kong 64, but this game is certainly as close as you can get before making that transition. It's pretty clear that this game has completionism on the mind. Now, it took me a while to notice this, but that flag that you raise at the end of each level actually tells you how completed that level is. Like, if you still have bonus rooms to find, the flag will fly like this, but if you found everything, then it will fly like this. And if you have found the DK coin for that level, then it will add a little yellow flag. Ah, completionism by semaphore. Mwah, I love it. Especially after how long I was wandering around Donkey Kong Country 2 trying to find that one bonus room that I missed. Yeah, that was a rough weekend. Donkey Kong Country 3 is a prime example of how a sequel should grow, expanding on the designs or concepts of the previous games while not changing the bottom line feel of play. One thing that is a big change from the last game, though, is the, say it with me now, atmosphere and aesthetic. There we go. While Donkey Kong Country 2's environments were very in-your-face and chaotic, Donkey Kong Country 3 harkens back to the feel and approach of the first game. It's homey and colorful. I might even go so far as to say it's comforting. I actually found it kind of hard to get a read on this game, and after a while I finally realized why. Donkey Kong Country 3 has easily the most consistent aesthetic of the trilogy, and yet it comes off as the weakest. I'm sure some of you are thinking my problem stems from the open world aspect, allowing the player to experience different world areas at different times and not seeing the true layout of the game, but that's actually not the case here. From the very beginning of the game, on the world map even, the music and the colors all paint a very comforting scene. When you make it to the first level, the sun is shining, the water is sparkling, the music is downright happy. That's fine. It's a good way to start off, but the problem is that the general feeling never really goes away. A big part of that is the level select areas. The music is bouncy and the sun is always shining. Like, this is the villain's castle at the end of the game. There is no sense of foreboding here. Even the ice levels that in the last two games made me feel far away from home and like I'm in a brave new world, freaking spoiled it by having these log cabins everywhere. Shit, son, I get cold, I'll just go inside for some hot cocoa. The factory levels? Oh, the factory levels. Surely they'll make me feel uncomfortable or removed from my element. What's with these guys? Little owls with lava cannons? Oh, they're adorable. Who comes up with this stuff? Yeah, so much of this game's atmosphere is undermined by this game's enemy design. I'm not really sure why it is they decided to stray away from the designs of the first two games, but seriously, I don't feel threatened by many of the enemies in this game, like at all. I mean, look at this guy. I'm gonna pick up that dry cleaning so hard. Oh wait, forgot my wallet. This is, however, in stark contrast to the bosses in this game. The second game got a lot more creative with its boss designs, but Dixie's Double Trouble outdoes Diddy's Conquest in a big way. These bosses don't even resemble the enemies leading up to them, and yikes, I was not expecting stuff like this, or this, walking into this game. I mean, Squirt may not be a challenge or all that imposing, but damn, that is creepy. And, well, you all know how I feel about water bosses. This is really creepy. So, epic boss fights aside, herein lies one of the major problems I have with this game. I get no real feeling of conflict out of the enemies or environments. Some of the levels do an okay job of conveying the adventure theme, but honestly, this game feels like more of an outing than an actual adventure. It's at this point in the game when I start asking myself, why am I on this so-called adventure? That wasn't introspection here, I mean that seriously. Why is Dixie Kong on this adventure? Nobody told me. There was no letter explaining things. I mean, I know that the first game doesn't really outright tell you either, but looking at the empty banana horde gives you a pretty good idea. Even the boss stages do a good job of conveying what Donkey's ultimate goal is. But in DKC 3, there was nothing. I even started the game again to see if there was some intro that I missed or something, but nope. As far as this game is concerned, you are just out and about this game. Fortunately, I managed to find a copy of this game that came in a box, and I found the introduction to the story in the instruction booklet. Both Donkey and Diddy have disappeared this time, so, you know, let's go find them. But seriously, what if this game was like the rest of my SNES collection? I would be storyless! All things considered, I'm not gonna fault a well-designed and ultimately fun game for lacking in the story department. I have no problem with adventure for adventure's sake. And even if this game was just a fun day out that turned into something more serious, that would be fine. Exploring this new area of the Donkey Kong world is just as fun as ever, and even more interesting than before, as the game has accentuated the calculated imbalance between the two playable Kongs. Dixie Kong is basically the same as she was last game, but Kiddy Kong makes use of his large stature to bring back the timing versus maneuvers balance the first game had. The team-up toss has also been altered, accomplishing different things depending on who is thrown. Dixie will land on higher platforms and latch onto secrets out of sight, and Kiddie can damage enemies if thrown, as well as locate secrets hidden in the ground. Kiddie's also got some other surprises to him, as he is also able to skip across bodies of water, which I found odd. He doesn't really have that look about him, and yeah, I didn't need or even really know about this ability until I cracked open a guide to find those last few bonus barrels. It's an ability that I literally only used twice, in one level, exclusively for secrets. And it takes some practice. It seems odd that the designers would include an ability like this if they're not going to use it. But then it gets even stranger when I found out that Dixie can barrel ride Kiddie like the steel barrels. This wasn't even mentioned in the guide. I discovered this in the third intro reel during the startup screens. Seriously, what else is this game not telling me? One thing the game certainly doesn't advertise is just how hard it is. It's really hard. Like, really hard. certainly more difficult than the last game, and that was something I wasn't expecting. The cover art for the game doesn't look like it wants to make you pull your teeth out or kill you. It looks like a fun day out, an adventure in summer hijinks, or Christmas holiday hijinks? Whatever. It doesn't take long before this game just outright sucker punches you with its difficulty, and this game's not even ashamed of how difficult it wants to be. In just about every level, there's a supplementary level element that cranks up the difficulty, be it a swarm of bees chasing you, owls shooting balls of lava at you, or just a straight up giant saw that's coming for you, for some reason. Right here, we can see just how far away from the original Donkey Kong Country we've come. At times, they found new ways to force you into confined spaces, or reasons to keep the stage moving without your input, or sometimes there was a unique enemy that posed a new challenge. But they so rarely inspired feelings of defeat, and usually were integrated into the level so seamlessly that it didn't feel like the gameplay was being changed. My first reaction to these changes were that Donkey Kong Country 3 is less creative than DKC or DKC 2. But when I consider the game as a whole, it's easy to see that the game doesn't really do anything wrong, it's just employing a new method of game design, focusing more on quickly adapting to new forms of challenge. For the most part, the levels in this game are challenging but still fun, and definitely satisfying when you finally complete them. But then you come to the lightning level. Yeah. The added difficulty in DKC 3 reaches its zenith in the level Lightning Lookout, where lightning strikes randomly and will kill you if you're too close. Also, if you're in the water when the lightning strikes at all, you're toast. Charred, crispy toast. And if that isn't bad enough, the very next level they introduce you to these guys, who, if you don't approach at exactly the right angle, they will... Oh, yeah, okay. That's all, folks. And then just when you think it can't get any worse, just when you think maybe you've seen it all, the game finishes things off with a swimming level where the controls are just reversed. Like, that's all they had. Are you even trying anymore? These 3 levels comprise the final run up to the fight with Rool. It makes sense to have some pretty hardy levels right before the fight with the big bad, but I can honestly say these are probably my 3 least favorite levels in the game proper. I didn't have the same sense of satisfaction upon completing them. They were just frustrating and felt kind of cheap, which is especially troubling because, well... I'm just gonna come out and say it. This is by far my least favorite incarnation of Rool. Baron K. Roolentstein, as he's called in this game, certainly offers the player a challenge, but it feels so empty. The methods by which you deal damage to him are inventive, sure, but actually attacking him is really finicky and often fails more than it succeeds. He has such a specific weak spot that it actually took me a few lives to properly figure out what I was supposed to hit with those barrels. When the battle eventually gets more elaborate, it doesn't feel epic or exciting, it just seems like a bunch of hoops to jump through. Like, look at this sequence. Rool doesn't directly attack the Kongs at all, which I suppose is in keeping with his mad scientist theme in this game, but it certainly takes away from the thrill of the battle. In DKC 2, Rool was intimidating. He was this big, imposing figure with a huge-ass gun, no less, and everything he did meant danger, and even death if you weren't careful. When you did manage to successfully hit him, you knew it. There were strong visual cues, and even an added element of danger to consider. I never once lost the feeling that I was doing battle with the big boss during this fight, even during all of my retries. Here in DKC 3, he just kind of hovers around, not doing anything. Dealing damage to him feels detached and like it would have happened by accident sooner or later. I mean, in some instances, I couldn't even see the event take place. Every time I had to retry this fight, it was just more frustrating. And the rematch with him at the end of The Lost World is even worse, with the objective mechanics even more chopped up and finicky than last time. I see what they were trying to do with this battle, but it didn't work for me. It kind of took away from the experience of the game overall, if I'm honest, especially when considering the other bosses in the game were done so well. So the ending of this game proper didn't leave me feeling so great, but tradition dictates that I 103% this game, so I did. The flag indicators were a big help, and The Lost World was understandably more difficult, and I must say, deliciously challenging. It felt like a perfectly natural extension of the game, complete with a final level that was more what the fuck than actually difficult, and a final boss that I was pretty disappointed in, so yeah, at least this game's consistent. Except that, after the rematch with Roolentstein, the game still has several more banana birds to find. Okay, so I do that. And then once I've found them all, Wrinkly points out that they want to take me somewhere, so they do, and what in the hell is that? Anybody? Anybody? What is it, and why is it in my Donkey Kong game? I legitimately don't know what to make of this. Nowhere else in the series do we see something like this. The only time we see animated creatures that are this much larger than us with this much detail are the bosses. So where did this come from? I came by this part of the game by way of a guide, so I can only imagine that I was supposed to have come here first, then returned with all the banana birds, but I'm not sure that would have helped. If there is mention of this bird somewhere in this game, I missed it. And even if they did try to set it up, it's still really jarring to even see something like this in the game. It's okay though, because then Mama Banana Bird helps you chase down Rool one last time and traps him under half an eggshell. No third battle or anything, just an eggshell. Yeah! You satisfied? No? Me neither. Let's finish this. Donkey Kong Country 3 is a strange animal. I can't say that it's perfect, and there's a lot here that doesn't work for me. The game's new approach to challenging gameplay falls apart from time to time, and the ending really flails and ends up being kind of weak. I guess you could say the game kind of lost me around here. But of course, no game is perfect, and the most important question to ask oneself when reviewing games is it fun? And yeah, Donkey Kong Country 3 totally is. All things considered, I think this game averages out to be pretty great. It may be my least favorite of the trio, but that still leaves it above droves of other games out there for me. Even if this game is lacking in nostalgic appeal for me personally, the magic imbued in all of the Rareware games I love is present here. And a daring experiment like this one gives context of origin to a lot of the ideas that me and many others think of as ubiquitous in classic games that would follow. Donkey Kong Country 3 is without a doubt a classic, one that I had the misfortune of having missed out on until now. And stay tuned, because next time we talk about something other than Donkey Kong. Wait, what? Goodbye, Donkey Kong. Hello, something else. We'll decide that next time. Feel free to check out some of my older videos, and don't forget to subscribe, like me on Facebook, and follow me on Twitter for all the latest updates.